can you really check your history and yourself?
Stop playing politics with my Punanny. Stop playing politics with my Punanny. Hey, 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 Republicans. I see you called on your fellow man. All dicks and no nuts. Then you rush to call me a slut. I'm standing up for what is mine. Call me the rib, but I'm really the spine of this whole great nation. Ain't gonna put me back on the plantation. No, stop playing politics with my Punanny.
Hi! Oh my gosh, I'm back. It is season 2 of Punanny Politixxx, and I'm back with my yoni on. I'm back with my big yoni, my golden yoni, as y'all know and love her from the videos. So wow, I'm back. It's been since November, like November 10th was our last time together. And I mean, all the things that have happened since November 10th, it's kind of like crazy and a little too much to recap, to be honest. It's just a little too much. And I was, sitting and thinking about like, what things to pull out and what to talk about, because usually, obviously when the show starts, I'm like, this is what's happening. This is going on in the world. So why don't we start first with my green screen, right? Because I know y'all are probably like, who's this fabulous lady behind me? And I'm wearing my hair sort of like hers. So on one of my episodes, I can't remember which one, I talked about a really amazing artist, Brooklyn-based, named Simone Lee. And she is the creator, the artist behind this piece that you're seeing right here called Brick House. And it's on the High Line. For those of you who are here in New York, you can go, I think it's like around 30th Street. And you can go and you can see this beautiful lady. I was just thinking about, Black women who are honored in our city, or just the essence of Black women honored in our city. And I thought about, of course, Brick House. And I thought about the Harriet Tubman statue that's uptown. But I decided to go with Miss Brick House here. So go check it out. If you're in New York and you haven't been up on the High Line before, or maybe you've been up on the High Line, but you haven't been as far up as 30th Street, Brick House is going to be there, I think, until spring of this year. And she actually just put up another one in Philly. So I'm not sure exactly where it is in Philly, Google. And if you're in Philly, you can definitely find it there. But if you're in New York, check out Brick House, because she's beautiful and, represented. So thank you, Simone Lee, for that. And, I'm going to be playing around. I mean, this green screen thing is kind of new to me. I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot. You can't tell, but my green screen is so huge. I could probably do a whole music video in my apartment. But, for right now, we'll just do the show and call it that. So, what am I going to talk about today? Because like I said, since November, it was November 10th. So the elections were already passed by the time I went off the air. But, all kind of things have happened since then. The Georgia runoff had started. That has come and gone. We know about that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We got through the year, we got through 2020, or I shouldn't say but. Well, I will for this, but we're still in a pandemic. I'll just say that we're still in the pandemic. And even though we made it through, and we're still going to make it through, there was a lot of loss last year. We're still hearing about COVID numbers rising and deaths happening. So I'm just going to say, everybody, please, continue to be vigilant, wear your mask, take care of your family, take care of, the people around you, your neighbors. Just do what we need to do so that we can move through this. Things were different this year. This is the first year, my parents always have like a huge Christmas celebration with the whole family. We did, me and my parents, and everybody else was on Zoom. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that scenario. So it's been, a very different time. But we're here and give thanks. You know, if you're here and you're watching this broadcast, give thanks. And yeah, we're going to continue to make it through. We're going to make it through. We're going to make it through. So I always start with like news. I don't want to call it bad news. It's just news. It's just news. And then I say good news. News and good news. And there's been a few things. So tomorrow is the inauguration. Wow. I mean, I have to say, it's probably been the longest 4 years of my life. And I'm sure I'm not alone. I remember in 2016 thinking, you know, that year, it felt so long. Like it felt like one of the longest years. And usually, you know, a year as you get older, it feels like it gets shorter. You know what I'm saying? But lately, it just felt like, woohoo, we're still in it. But tomorrow's inauguration, and not that is going to, you know, do a 180 on everything, but at least we're moving into some shift and change and give thanks for that. So tomorrow is also a day that I think that our fair Attorney General here in New York has been waiting for, Miss Letitia James. If you don't know who Letitia James is, there she is. So Miss Letitia, who I know is waiting for the outgoing president. I know she's probably just standing at the side door waiting for him. But, you know, give thanks to Letitia for, you know, her courage, really, because she has been out here on the front lines really trying to get things right, just to be straight up. And if you're not really sure, Letitia recently just filed a lawsuit against the NYPD. And basically about excessive force used in the protests this past summer. Well, not just this past summer, actually from May to December of 2020 here in New York. She filed a 69-page lawsuit seeking a court-appointed monitor to manage an overhaul of the NYPD practices at large demonstrations, which she says have devolved into police abuse for decades. And, you know, if we're here in New York or anywhere around the world, you know what that is. And from May to December, I believe she's got 1,300 complaints about officers of various ranks repeatedly and without justification using batons, fist strikes, pepper spray, and other physical force against New York residents at protests. And these were, as she quoted, peaceful protests. Protesters, many of whom had never been charged with any crime, were merely exercising their First Amendment rights. In that they suffered concussions, broken bones, cuts, bruises, and other physical injuries. So I was just reading today that I didn't even realize yesterday there was a MLK march that happened in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, and some unrest happened there as police officers were doing what they do. And then also there are the Teamsters in the Bronx are protesting. Well, they're striking, really. They're striking, trying to get a $1 raise, And the police went to the Bronx and were arresting people. $1 raise. And again, peaceful, not, you know, out here doing anything. But isn't it interesting, you know, those folks that were up there are considered what we're considering essential workers. $1 raise. These companies can't find $1 more for the people that they say are essential. Let's just sit on that for a second. So I'm just going to say, you know, much love to Letitia and, you know, pray for her, put a cover on her, because she's out here doing the work of the people for real. The next thing I want to talk about, you know, I don't want to talk. I feel like we're probably on insurrection overload because people have been talking about that so much. It's just been so many things. But I did want to mention about Ayanna Pressley. There's my girl, Ayanna. Because if you hadn't read about Ayanna, when all of that was going down and she went into her office originally, her and her staff, to shelter in place. And that was when they realized that the panic buttons in her office had been taken out. And so if you're not aware, Ayanna and a few of the other, representatives inside of, what they call themselves, the squad, AOC, and, why am I forgetting the sisters' names? But you know who I'm talking about. They, often are receiving threats. And so the panic buttons were put into their offices just, for that reason, to make sure that they could be safe if anything happened. So they noticed that the panic buttons were taken out when they went into the offices during when all this was happening. So what was also quite interesting is that another Congresswoman, Mickey Sherrill from New Jersey, talked about seeing other Congresspeople bringing folks into the Capitol the day before, doing what she called, and I'm just saying she called, reconnaissance. And I'm saying what she called, but she's a veteran. Let's just say that she's a veteran. So I'm just going to say that possibly when she's looking at, when she's remembering and looking at and thinking about how people were brought through places, she could use the term reconnaissance because she's probably done it, seen it, knows exactly what it is. So again, I'm just saying, as we continue to move forward, because we're not going back, as we continue to move forward, continue to, send the good vibes, put the prayer call, everything over these sisters that are in, and all these legislators who are in Congress and really working to make change here. And one more thing I do want to say about that day is just that, one thing that really struck me that day was the fact that when I was watching the news, there were a lot of outlets or people who kept calling it like the worst day in history of the country. And while it, will live in infamy, as they say, it will definitely live in infamy. But I think the worst day really depends on who you talk to, right? And what you know about the history of this country, because, worst day maybe really, could be something different for those people of Tulsa, and I know, they're not here, but, Tulsa's a pretty horrible day in this US history, Rosewood, how about Newtown? How about Wounded Knee? How about the move bombing? There's so many things that have happened here. And I think the perspective is really interesting. And again, it's not to say that that day wasn't a terrible day, but there's a lot of terrible things that have happened on this soil. So, yeah, that just kind of struck me it just struck me. So, if you're not somebody who is, I don't want to say an American historian. That's not quite what I mean. But if you're kind of somebody who has learned from school about the history of this country and kind of left it there, this is the time. We're now in the time to go deeper. We're now in the time to go deeper. And I would, there's a lot of places to start, but maybe just start with Howard Zinn, The People's History of the United States. Good start, because there's a lot of books to read. But get informed about where we live, where we are. Again, I'm sure I'm not alone when being very tired of hearing well, this is not us, and it's like, yeah, this is us. This is us, child, and I'm not talking about the TV show. This is us. So yes, there's just those few things on my mind. I have so many things. I'm trying to think. I feel like I don't want to go through them all. Because I was going to read something else. I'll just say this. I'll move away from that, and I'll just say, talking about the Flint water crisis. So if you're not sure, Rick Snyder, who was the former governor of Michigan, was charged in the case of the Flint water crisis. If you're not sure, just look at those two bottles and you'll tell the difference between the water quality that was happening in Flint. I mean, and actually still, the water in Flint is not the greatest versus Detroit. And I know that he was only charged with misdemeanors. And then I read something today where they're trying to, of course, get the charges dropped because somehow he was charged in the wrong county. I don't understand. I mean, I know folks are about these shenanigans. Yes, I do. But I'm just like, really? So, yeah, let us pray that they continue to move forward and can prosecute, because they knew exactly what was going on in Flint. They knew. And finally with the news, I'm gonna leave it here. If you're in New York, actually all over the world, actually all over the country, I should say now, because it became that huge. Then you know about what happened with Keon Harold and his son at the Arlo Hotel here in New York, when a young white woman accused his son of stealing her phone, then proceeded to attack him physically, and then got her phone back because she left it in an Uber. But, left New York and I guess, went to California and didn't think that she was going to, have any consequences or repercussions, as they say. And they went and got that girl. I'm sure that many of y'all saw the interview with Gayle King and how she shushed Gayle. Listen. I was watching that. I was like, like, for every auntie I have, I wanted to grab that girl. That's not, it's just like, did you just, so, so with that, I just want to send love to Keon. You see Keon there in the red scarf, and Kat, who are the parents of Keon Jr., as they are fighting for justice for their son. That young woman was arrested. The other part about that story that had me vexed was because, of course, then when you realize you're wrong, or maybe not realize you're wrong, you realize you're caught. That's really, it's not even about wrong, because I don't even think the girl even still thinks that she was wrong. But you realize you're caught and you're in a little bit of trouble. Then she starts talking about how she's Puerto Rican, so she can't be racist. Let me tell you something about that. I'm about to do a whole entire show about that. That is coming in February for Black History Month. So, let us not think that, because we are brown folks, that we can't be racist against Black folks. Like, that's just not the truth. But like I said, I have a guest coming, which I'm not even going to talk about right now, but we're going to break all of that down. So anyway, much love to Keon and Kat, and, keep supporting them. If you're not sure what you can do for them, I believe that there's a couple of petitions going around about petitioning the Arlo Hotel, for all kind of things, because they were very much in the wrong around this as well. Their lawyer is Ben Crump. I believe if you go to his page, his website, you can find the petitions there to support Keon and Kat. So what's the good news? Well, the good news is the news that we already know, and but I just want to shout out these sisters as I always do. So big love always to LaTosha Brown, Black Voters Matter. Her and her team were on the ground. They did the work. They got it done in Georgia, along with, of course, our girl Stacey Abrams, Fair Fight. Like, come on, everybody and everybody who went to Georgia, who, I don't care where you live. I know people, went down there and did work and canvassed and did everything. I just want to shout out everybody who did that work in Georgia. And of course, there we have John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock. So now we got to get it done. You know what I mean? Like, this is really just the beginning. You know, I always think about voting. Voting is like pledging. And I know people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, because you pledge and then you cross and then you got to run the chapter. Okay. So you can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it is. All right. So it's all great. And we are proud and we are happy. But now the work really begins. You know what I'm saying? We got to hold people's feet to the fire. And finally, you know, what has really been getting me through this time? What has really been getting me through this time is the beautiful brothers that have shown up on Netflix and Amazon Prime. Listen to me, people. I know everybody is not all about, you know, Bridgerton. Like, some people like, oh no, I can't, you know, Bridgerton, they got all kinds. Some people like, yes, Bridgerton. I'm here to tell you this. Even if you don't care for the storyline in Bridgerton, you got to care for this. You got to care for this because, listen, I don't care. I was just like, this is helping me. I don't know if it's helping you. It's helping me to cope right now. Okay. So who am I looking at? Who? Okay. First brother up, because come on, listen. I'm just giving the black man some love right now. I know this is Punanny Politixxx, but listen, I'm giving the black man some love tonight. Okay. So this is Martins Imengbe. British actor. Just listen. Look at that beautiful face. Look at that beautiful smile. Brilliant actor. Come on. If you ain't watching Bridgerton, just go watch and see this brother with his shirt off for a little while, do his thing. Who else we gonna be looking at Bridgerton? Come. You can't be mad. You can't be mad. That is Regé-Jean Page, also known as the Duke of Hastings on Bridgerton. Again, you don't have to like Bridgerton. You don't have to like the story. Just go and gaze upon the brotherhood. Okay. And who else is on Netflix? So there's another show on Netflix called Lupin. Omar Sy, French actor. I ain't never seen this brother in my life. I'm like, where were they hiding this brother? Clearly in France. Okay. That's what I have to say though, too. I feel like because we're in quarantine, Netflix is sort of spreading these shows around to the States that they might have kept back because they think that like we didn't want to see it or we don't read subtitles or something. Listen to me. Y'all check out Lupin. You check out Omar Sy. Look at these beautiful brothers. Just beautiful. Okay. And I'm almost done with the brothers. I'm almost done. If you have not seen One Night in Miami, there's the next quad of brothers. Beautiful. I mean, first of all, the movie's really amazing. I mean, really, really amazing. And all of them are acting brilliantly in it. So who do I have up first? We have Eli Goree. He is playing Muhammad Ali, this beautiful young man. Yes. We have Kingsley Ben-Adir playing Malcolm X. Brilliant, amazing. I mean, really, like, I think I really appreciated this film too, because it really showed a side of Malcolm that we don't necessarily see portrayed on film. So really beautiful. Who up next? Aldous Hodge playing Jim Brown. Come on, you ain't mad at that. You ain't mad at Aldous. You ain't mad. And finally, we have Leslie Odom Jr. playing Sam Cooke. Let me tell you something about Leslie Odom Jr. And I know that everybody sort of got on the Leslie Odom Jr. bandwagon when he was in Hamilton. But I've been on the Leslie Odom Jr. bandwagon since a show called Smash on NBC. Now, I know a lot of people like Smash, what it, you know, because I'm sort of like a, not even sort of like a, I am. I'm a musical nerd. And so it was all about like these young people, you know, wanted to be on Broadway and, you know, the trials and tribulations. And I really came to know him on that show. And so Leslie Odom Jr. really does a hell of a job playing Sam Cooke. And who brought all this beautiful fineness together? This beautiful fine sister, Regina King. I like Regina King. Yes, I'm clapping for Regina King. I love Regina King so much. I mean, I know we all do. We could probably just do a whole Regina King, love session, for hours on Regina King. But bless her. She did an amazing job. That was her, I think, feature film directorial debut. And if you haven't checked it, that's on Amazon Prime. So that's the brother rundown. That, it's been keeping me good for a little while. Woo! Anyway, nothing like brothers that look good and do their job well. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody was so wonderful at everything that they're doing. And that's that. That's the overhaul. I think I went way longer than I was supposed to, but it's all good. So before we bring on our guest for the night, Pastor Yolanda Batts, we are going to, of course, get into the moon forecast. And it is the first quarter moon in Aries. We are, I think tomorrow or tonight, we're on the cusp of Aquarius season. So here we go. The opening quarter moon in Aries on January 20th, coinciding with the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States, is a time of ignition. Here, we are building momentum upon the energy of last week's new moon in Capricorn. Ideas conceived at this time may now be taking form. Likewise, seeds of intention planted on the new moon in Aries back on March 24th of 2020 may now begin to sprout, despite the rocky terrain in which they've been germinating for the last 9 months, as the world battled a pandemic and the political atmosphere in the U.S. became more extreme with each passing month. The fiery energy of this week's Aries moon is heightened by a combustible meeting of Mars and Uranus in Taurus. Unexpected scenarios may erupt under these conditions. A positive experience of this transit could manifest as a flash of inspiration, seemingly out of nowhere, catalyzing one to take action. Bursts of aggression from unexpected quarters may also surface at this time. Uranus has been slowly moving in Taurus since March of 2019, having stationed direct just last week after a retrograde period. As the planet slowly picks up speed in its forward motion, the arrival of Mars, like the first quarter moon, may have the effect of turning the ignition key. A situation which has lain dormant may now be awakened. Indeed, Uranus is often known as the Great Awakener. Associated with lightning, electricity, innovation, the future, progress, and a collective outlook, it has been said that the job of Uranus is to spontaneously reconcile the irreconcilable. Uranus is the modern ruler of the sign of Aquarius. Resistance, rebellion, and revolution in the name of liberty are associated themes. Recent events serve as a reminder that these ideas can be shared by many people for whom their respective meanings take on drastically opposing contexts. The feeling accompanying this waxing moon may be a need to express energy. Physical exercise is a way of honoring this need. Participating in any kind of competitive sport is another healthy way to acknowledge the Aries moon and the Mars transit. Passions will be aflame under this moon, and making love not war is the way to go. If you find yourself alone on this occasion, perhaps treat yourself to a little candlelight and some self-love. Many of us now find ourselves at the dawning of a new era. The invitation is to find positive ways to embrace the energies affecting all of us. We have emerged from a period of great constriction, sorrow, and loss. While our crisis is far from over, this is a time to implement our hopes and intentions and seek inspiration as to how we can begin to rebuild our lives moving forward. This moon forecast was brought to you by Moist Paula at Zodiac Soundtracks. Welcome to the first quarter moon in Aries. Yes. First quarter moon in Aries. Thank you, Moist Paula, for the forecast. So it is that time. I am really excited to bring to the stage Pastor Yolanda Batts. Woo!
Hey, Shelley Nicole.
Hey. I always bring everybody to the stage because I miss the stage.
I love the stage as well.
I know. So before we get into our conversation, I just want to tell everybody a little bit who you are, about who you are, I should say. And So I'm just gonna start and say that Pastor Yolanda is one of my pastors. So that's we're gonna start right there. But I'm gonna tell you, Pastor Yolanda Batts is co-founder, co-pastor of Celebration Spiritual Center in Brooklyn, New York, bringing a fresh perspective to the New Thought movement. Pastor Yolanda, affectionately known as PY, is a powerful teacher, dynamic speaker, vocalist, really should say hell of a vocalist, but vocalist, and engaging storyteller whose fearless transparency and unconditional love bring an innovative and fun approach to understanding and living the teachings of A Course in Miracles. She is a fearless living strategist, supporting clients in developing their restoration blueprint to release past trauma, fear, limiting beliefs, and reestablish the truth of who and what, or as we say, who and whose they are. Welcome to the stage, Pastor Yolanda Batts. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Shelley Nicole. Thank you for inviting me to the womb of creation.
Thank you. Yes, I like that.
You can borrow that. You can borrow that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to tell folks quickly how I came to Celebration Spiritual Center, as we call it, CSC. Because I feel like I have a story probably kind of similar to yours and similar to so many other people who are coming out of a traditional Christian experience, you know, coming from Baptist church or Pentecostal church or wherever we come from. Right. So I have a friend who is also your friend, Katia, who the longest was trying to get me to come to CSC. And I was like, girl, no, I am not going back to church.
I don't do church. Right?
I know you know it. And she was just like, no, it's different. You got to come. And I was just like, okay. and I didn't come. So fast forward, you know, maybe a year or two, then our friend and yours, may she rest in peace, Demia, was like, you need to come to church. And I was like, girl, Katia's been trying to get me to come. I ain't coming. And she was like, no. And you got to come. And I said, you know, for you, all right, I'm going to come. And I remember the first couple of times, you know, we have all of in our mind, you know, of course, what church is going to be, you know, what it's going to look like, what it's going to sound like. So I kind of did what folks do sometimes. You kind of sneak in like right before the sermon, or like you
in the back, right?
Exactly. You sit in the back, do the whole thing. But I quickly saw, you know, that I needed to let go of whatever that idea was that I had, or whatever that story was, really, you know, whatever that story was. And because this wasn't it, you know, this wasn't it. And so I'm really thankful, you know, to Demia for really just continuing to look at me and be like, girl, you know, sending me email, you know, with links to the YouTube, you know, broadcast, you know, all that. She just was like, nope, you're going to come. You're going to come. And I think she knew something that I didn't know, which was that through everything that we went through with her, that I was going to need that. You know, I was going to need that. And so, yeah, I'm really thankful to have found this spiritual community at Celebration Spiritual Center. And it's so great because when we were able to be together, it was down the street from my house. And you can't beat that.
Just roll out of bed and come on, right?
Exactly. But tell me, or tell the folks here a little bit about your story, because I know some of your story in terms of, you know, how you came to, you know, the New Thought practice. But why don't you talk about that and what that is, so people have an understanding, you know, of what that is. Yeah.
Well, let's start first with the understanding of what New Thought is. New Thought, the name implies it's something new. It's only been around for about 180 years. And while the idea it isn't new, it's new in terms of being the grand scheme of religion and spirituality and philosophy, but it's rooted in the ancient wisdom teachings from all over the world. And for many of us, its origin in Christianity is important because it gives us kind of a bridge into the ancient wisdom traditions, ancient ideas. And New Thought came about because of thinkers. I like to use the word thinkers, like Emerson and Thoreau. And they were studying in their time these ancient Far East, and they were merging it with Western philosophy. And they were not only just studying, for example, the Bible, the wisdom in the Bible, but they were also looking at text and religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. They were merging it all because they realized that there was this through line that for what I say is true. And so no matter what religion you find yourself attached to or gravitating to, if you go deep into it, there's this through line that every one of us have. So it doesn't matter the path that brings you in the door. It doesn't matter what speaks to you. Underneath it all is this profound understanding that there's one God. Call it by many names, call it by no name at all. It's formed, it's formless. It is this mind in back of and behind everything. And we are connected to it. That was important to me because coming out of the church, I spent a lot of time in church, growing up in the Baptist tradition, almost every day in church.
Okay.
The experience that I received then was profound and important in terms of community, in terms of establishing a foundation that there is a God. But what I began to realize is that God was bigger than even that. And that I had a relationship with this God, whatever I called it, named and unnamed. I was in relationship to it. I wasn't separate from it. It wasn't judging me. It wasn't keeping a naughty and nice list, I like to say. It wasn't Santa Claus. It was just pure energy. And that energy, that thought, that ability to create is behind everything we see, everything we know. And I'm connected to it and you're connected to it. And it is powering our ability to create as human beings. That was so important. And I wanted to be in a movement and in a tradition that allowed me not to check my brain at the door, that allowed me to bring my thoughts, my questions, my seeking, all of that to the table and not get caught up in superstition, but understand laws and principles that guide the universe so that I'm no longer surprised when things happen in my life. I get to understand how and why that I'm a co-creator with the universe. That's so powerful. It takes me out of fear, takes me out of the victim place in that respect, that God is doing something to me and realizing that God is moving through me and then ultimately as me.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I came out of that tradition and it was a long and winding road. And when you ask me, how did you get here? First thing I think of is Deborah Cox. But anyway, other than that, it's a long and winding road that I never realized would converge in this way, that I would go from church to no church to being, oh, maybe I'm a Buddhist, maybe I'm an atheist, to knowing that there is a God and knowing that I'm connected to it and wanting other people to realize that as well. And wanting to help people heal from their church trauma, because many of us have it. We went to church and we were taught to fear God as opposed to know that God is unconditional love. We went to church and we were taught that we were bad. We went to church and we were taught that we just have blind obedience to something that we cannot explain. It is beyond concepts, but it can be talked about and taught in such a way that you can live practical spirituality.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, your story is similar to mine. I feel like I've always been a seeker.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've always landed in these, in so many places. I've been on my share of silent retreats and, I've read the books and I used to call myself a pseudo Buddhist because I was never like deep in the teachings, but I was around it.
Buddhism by osmosis.
Right, exactly. But there was always something that I missed about, I guess, the church community or the vibe of it, I guess I should say. And I think that that was one of the things that really I love about CSC, because it still feels Black, because it is. And a lot of the times, but a lot of times when you start to get into some of these other ways of spiritual practices, you won't find Black people, or we have to really make space. Like you can't just walk in the door and be like, oh, here we are. It's always a thing. So I think, and I would tell people, I said, it's sort of like it's church without like the fire and brimstone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting because representation matters. It matters in every aspect of our lives. Pastor Greg and I, when we were in the process of visioning CSC and saying yes to CSC, we said that we wanted to create a place that we would go to, a place that reflected the community aspect of church, because there was good stuff in church. The music was always on point.
Yes. Yes.
The meals were always good. The community was always good. The foundation that there is underneath this all, that something is out there, something that we're connected to, all that's important. And so we wanted to bring the good of church and elevate it in a new way by bringing these teachings about law and principle and making the music of New Thought, which tends to be sometimes very Caucasian or very world, but you can't find yourself in it. And so when I was in church, as I began to move out of traditional ideas about God, I still love gospel.
Yeah.
Right? I still loved gospel, but I found myself having to turn my head a little bit to the side. Like I couldn't wholly accept all of the unworthiness that it was perpetuating. I'm not worthy of this God, especially when I believe that if God created me perfect, whole, and complete, I remain holy. Now, have I forgotten? Have I made mistakes? Yes, but I'm still worthy. I can't be anything else. And so I found myself having to turn my head a little bit and like, oh, this is good. And that vocalist, she is really singing. But I couldn't incorporate it into my daily life. I couldn't no longer listen in the same way. At CSC, we bring all the goodness of gospel. We call it New Thought Gospel, with the messaging of truth, that you are as God created you, that you remain that way. And yes, you've made mistakes, but God is not keeping this list of those mistakes. That mistakes are for correction, that I am connected to this power. All those kinds of things that you would think of that are affirmative, but they're also true and reinforce whatever we're teaching at CSC in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was definitely, what I found, when I got there. I was just like, oh, it was just that familiar feeling. But like I said, without some of the extra baggage. And I was just like, okay. But I have to tell you, there were so many times early on where I was like, oh, I'm just waiting. Like it's going to be 5 minutes.
I'm just waiting for them to tell me, right? I'm just waiting for them to remind me of how unworthy I am. I'm just waiting for them to remind me that I'm a sinner. And people have that experience. They just keep waiting. One of a member of our choir, he kept saying, and this was years after, he kept saying, they can't be this nice. Something's wrong up in here. Right? They can't keep telling me this. They can't keep reminding me of the truth of who I am. And we were like, yeah, this is who we are.
Yeah, that is, yeah, definitely. I totally get it.
You're like, they're going to lock the door and they're going to beg for all my money. It's going to happen. I'm waiting.
I know you waiting for the building fund sign to go up.
But when you understand the nature of reality and when you understand that the abundance of life is flowing to you and in your favor, you don't have to pressure people. We always talk about it's traumatizing to be in that environment where you don't know if your name going to be put up on the roll because you're not giving. We don't operate that way. We say give what feels good.
Yeah. Because
that's the energy. There's cause and effect. The energy under which you give is the energy under which you receive. And so if you're giving from that place where it's tight or it's constricted, that's what you're going to get. And we don't want people to operate that way. We want to teach the law of circulation and how it really works so that you can reap the benefits in your life. We want you to show up as your full self. And we want you to check in with yourself. And so that you're not doing things that would be unloving. Like, oh, I really can't afford to give this week, but if I don't, there's going to be some retribution coming my way. That's not how it works. When we give from the energy of love and it feels good, then we receive that in return.
Absolutely. I want to just jump a little bit to A Course in Miracles, because I think coming to CSC was the first time I had ever heard of A Course in Miracles. And so I know there are a lot of different texts that y'all refer to, but A Course in Miracles is like one of the main texts. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know probably a lot of folks might not know it, or if they know it, they don't know it in depth.
Well, you know, it's interesting. A Course in Miracles has been around for 50 or so years as a sacred text, as a text that is used to talk about a psycho-spiritual philosophy or a mindset or a spiritual development teaching or path. It's come into probably more awareness now since Marianne Williamson ran for president. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about the text and what it is. It's teaching the power of the mind. It's talking about how we create cause and effect, that we are in fact an extension of the one cause, that one mind that is God. And so we're no longer afraid to realize that we're connected to God, that we've never been separate, in fact, and that we're not sinners, that we shouldn't fear God. We should open up and have a conversation and be in communication with God. God should be a personal experience, and that our perceptions can shift and change based on becoming aware of what we think, how we think, and the conditioning that has created fear in our lives. We've all had so many lived experiences that contribute to how we think, how we show up, what I call fear filters, those ideas that we didn't realize we're creating this filter, like on Snapchat. I didn't realize that I had this filter of unworthiness. And ever since then, I see everything through that filter. I didn't realize that. We use A Course in Miracles to become aware of what you think, how you perceive, and how that perception affects your interactions in your daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, since you're talking about fear, and I know at CSC, you've done a course called 50 Days of Fearless Living. And right now we're in a moment where there's so much going on.
Yep.
I mean, levels, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you know,
it feels that way.
Yeah, it feels that way, right? It feels like we're in, you know, the global pandemic that is COVID. You know, we're in a global pandemic that is racism. We're in a, you know, we are looking at, you know, people sort of, I don't want to even say coming out of the woodwork, because they've always been there. Like we know who these folks are that showed up at the Capitol, you know what I'm saying? But for a lot of people, it was very jarring in a way, like that. I think it was different, you know, depending on who you were. Like that day for me, I was angry, you know, because I'm looking at it like if, you know, as we've heard a million times, if Black and brown folks would have showed up there like that, it would have been a massacre. You know, it wouldn't have ended the way it did. You know, which was pretty much, I'm not going to say peacefully, but people got to go home. You know what I'm saying? People got to go home. But I think we're in a time where folks feel very uneasy. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. You know, when you created, I guess, 50 Days of Fearless Living, you know, what is inside of that, and what are some of the things that people can do at this time? I mean, I guess these are two different questions, but, you know, to sort of, I don't want to say push the fear down, but move it, you know what I mean? Or transform it, you know, transmute it. Is that the word I think I'm looking for? Yeah. Well,
you know, Shelley Nicole, I have lived in a very fearful existence, and I have understood how that feels to be so constricted in my thinking and energetically and physiologically feeling the effects of fear. And so as I've studied the Course in Miracles more and more, I realized that fear comes from the psychospiritual perspective, right? There's a physiological understanding of fear. We'll talk about that. There's a psychospiritual understanding, what's happening in the mind and therefore in the body and in the experience. And so I've lived fearfully, full of fear, so debilitating that it would prevent me from moving forward, because there was these ideas playing over and over on loop in my mind about what I could do, how I could do it. And it created the sensation in my body of fear. And so that's part of it. What we're maybe feeling right now is not only what's happening in the world, but the history of what has happened to us as a people.
Yes.
And it's important to understand that part of what's happening is our nervous system is out of alignment. Our nervous system is on hyper alert because as a people, we've withstood all kinds of tests and trials and experiences. And so when we see things that confirm the reality out here in the world now, it just triggers us more and more and more and more. And so we got to understand a couple of things, that our brain is operating in a certain way and our being and our soul is holding a different perspective. What does that mean? There's this physiological piece of fear, this little bitty thing in the back at the base of the brain stem called the amygdala. It's about the size of a pea. That's where all of the energy, all the experiences, all that would cause us to respond physically to an attack. It is ancient. Ancient. It's just there. And so the moment that something triggers that response, it hijacks our whole experience. It just takes over. So you no longer have the ability to discern what is true and what is false. You either fight, flee, freeze, or faint. Those are you're in that energy of, I gotta go out and attack. I need to get the hell out of here. I don't know what to do. Or I'm just going to pretend nothing's happening. I'm just going to faint. I'm just going to just melt. Right? Have you ever experienced any of those in relationship to everything that's happening right now? That little piece of the brainstem, the amygdala, about the size of a pea, is running the show. Now, take that with the conditioning that we as a people have experienced. Take that with our own personal stories. What's happening is it keeps triggering the same physiology, even though the experience is completely different.
Mm.
Take that in.
Right.
It's triggering the ancient post-traumatic slave narrative. It's triggering our personal when we weren't feeling safe. All of that's getting triggered. So we got to begin to separate what is really happening versus what we have been conditioned to experience in our body. We got to train our body to respond to our mind in a different way. First thing we need to do is really be selective in how much intake we have. We got to be the masters of our mind, the captains of our faith, the owners of our experience, in that we get to decide how much intake we have, right? We get to decide, oh, wait, this is too much stimulation on my nervous system. I need to step back. We also need to decide that we're not going to argue our point anymore. We're not going to argue that Black people in this way are being oppressed, victimized, on and on it goes. I found a lot of people with this whole thing around the riot, the insurrection. Part of it is a desire to try to show people, see. But when you do that, you reactivate your own trauma. Now, there's a way to have conversation, but when you check in with you and you realize that the person that you're speaking with is not hearing you, it's time to disengage. Take a breath and ask what is mine to do. Who are you asking? You're asking spirit. You're asking your connection to God.
I think that's big. I think that's big across all conversations of conflict. Like really, like when we're always trying to make somebody hear us. And sometimes you just need to just, fade back and check in with yourself. And then and it's also the thought of like that intake. I think there's also this thing that makes people believe like if they're not always watching, then they're not going to be in the know. And so like,
And that's interesting. We got to check in why that is. Why do we need to, quote unquote, be in the know? As a people, we've been conditioned to think less of our intelligence, less of our skill set, less of ourselves. And so we're constantly proving our intelligence, constantly proving that we're hustling, preparing, grinding. For me, those are all things that are residue of a slave mentality, not from a Hotepi perspective, right?
yeah.
But just literally residue that we have to constantly be on alert, constantly be proving, constantly be trying to better ourselves. What if who and what we are was already good enough? What if who and what we are didn't need improving? What if what we're doing is showing who we are and operating from this love vibration and not sentimentality, operating from this unified understanding of ourselves? So that as we go out, we check in what is ours to do and we leave the rest. We want to be well and not woke so much. The wokeness is killing us as a people because we're constantly trying to prove, hear me, see me, as opposed to coming from the perspective that who and what I am is already worthy. Now, spirit, love, whatever thought system you want to align with, how do I move forward from this? What is mine to do once I figure out how I'm going to be right now?
I think that's a big one. I know that you all have talked about sort of like almost waking up in the morning and saying, what is mine to do?
What is mine to do after I've checked in on my spiritual practice?
Well, yeah, talk about that. because it's be do have. It's be do have.
Because here's the thing. This fear sensation is just running because we feel so disconnected from our source. It's just running there in the background until we take time to plug in like we do our cell phone. The first thing we tend to do now is check to see what the news is. We don't check to see what is true in our very vibration. We don't check to see any of that. We just start scrolling. We haven't firmly established the routine, the practice by which we move through our day. We can affirm ourselves that I'm this and I'm that. But if you don't know it internally, and if you haven't connected to that knowing, that well-being, you're just out here affirming things. The practice is so that you operate from the fullness of yourself, that you charge yourself just like you do your cell phone, so that when you go out into the world, you are connected, rooted, grounded in something.
Right.
And you're not swayed by the opinions of other people. And you're tapped into what is mine to do now that I know who I am, now that I know that I come from this one mind, now that I know that its infinite intelligence is my infinite intelligence, that it is going to guide how I interact, what I do, where I go, all that good stuff.
Right. So for people who don't, spiritual practice, that's a wide variety of things. And some people think, because I've been meditating for many years, I've heard a million times, I can't meditate.
Yep.
I can't meditate, and
I done tried it and I can't.
Right. So there is something that you all teach us at CSC about, I guess, starting, your spiritual practice, and you can share that. I know it, but you can share it.
Well, first thing, I think that most of us, because we are seekers, those of us that are taking a little this and a little of that, what we tell you is that you've been doing maybe too much in terms of your spiritual practice. You get up and you do 45-minute meditation, you journal for an hour, you do this, you do that. What we say is, if your spiritual practice doesn't feed you, the moment you're done, you feel exhausted. You're doing too much. If it doesn't uplift and inspire you and motivate you to go out in your day, it's too much. And so what we want people to do is evaluate. First of all, do you have a spiritual practice? Do you have this anchor, this connection, this ritual that you do every day? And if you do, is it too much? I love to think about this. We keep thinking that we have to do all these things to prove to God that we're worthy. Mm-hmm. God already knows we're worthy. We're just reminding ourselves that we're connected to that which knows we're worthy when we practice, right? So 5, 5, and 5. 5 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of affirmative journaling, not Oh, this is horrible. Affirmative. What do I know to be true about myself? What is love asking me? What kinds of questions that motivate me in my day? 5 minutes of that. 5 minutes of reading something affirmative, supportive, truth based. There's all kinds of text. So pick a path, any path, and read about it every day. 15 minutes out the door or taking a shower. It's that idea that most people only want to do a spiritual practice when they need it, as opposed to having it there, just continually filling you up, continually filling you up, continually filling you up. And we want to establish that pattern, whatever it is, whatever text. There's all kinds. We have a document that lists some. 5, 5, and 5. Start off easy. Start off so you can win at it. Start off so you can be consistent at it.
Absolutely. I mean,
and I say, if you can breathe, you can meditate. So if you breathe, sit there for 5 minutes and just focus on your breath.
Yes. And I mean, and as far as like affirmative writing goes, I just want to say to folks, because maybe if you're, in a space where you're not feeling so good about yourself and you might find it challenging to find something affirmative to say, you could always go back to your gratitudes, because if nothing else, you can be grateful that you woke up in the morning. You can be grateful that you're breathing. You can be grateful that you have a roof over your head. You can be grateful you have shoes on your feet, So there's always something you can find a gratitude space for if you're not quite at the space where you can, dig in, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And many people are, as we start to think about like law of attraction and manifestation and all these things, they take the surface idea, I can create my life, I can create anything, my thoughts have power. That's all true. But they don't take it the next step to realize that I'm always creating with my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Every thought is a prayer. Ooh, take that in. Not just the ones that I like, not just the ones that I am worthy, I am kind, not just those. Every thought has power. Every thought creates. And so if you're thinking about that, the energy of creation, cause and effect, law of attraction, right? We keep using that just to manifest things instead of realizing it's guiding our whole life. Every thought has power. Every thought is a prayer. So if I'm thinking thoughts that are loving and affirmative, gratitude is the first place to begin. It doesn't have to be this big thing. Oh, Lord, thank God I got out of that. It just has to be specific, because the way the law works, thoughts are drawn to similar thoughts. I think a thought, then another thought comes to join it, and another thought. So start out there. What in this moment can I be grateful for? And I guarantee you, as you start to write, more thoughts will come, because thought is always operating. And that's where you can begin. Simple gratitude. That's it. 15 minutes.
Yeah. And I think that as we, circling back to the whole thing of fear and moving through that, I feel like that is how you start to ground yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that you can start to really not just find yourself in story all the time.
So that you can stay connected to truth more and more and more. And the truth of your being, the truth that guides you. Fear is the sense of separation from God, from truth. Think about that. When I'm in that place of fear, doubt, and worry, I'm not necessarily taking in the truth of what can be happening. I'm playing a story over and over, and my fear story leads to another fear story, leads to another fear story. And because of the way law works, then more stories come to join it. And then eventually I have an experience that validates my belief. We get to change the thought pattern that we're exercising and operating under, so that the life that we see and is reflected is different, a different perspective. Fear keeps us stuck out here away from God. Love, connection, truth brings us into alignment with the God within us. That's the other thing. God is within us. It's not out here judging us. It's with us all the time, in the valleys, in the mountains, top experiences. It is there. And so when we turn our focus that it is always there, we begin to become aligned with solutions to whatever problem it is, right?
Yes.
I know that if I'm in fear, there has to be a solution. There has to be something in opposition to this. Fear, physiology, all that stuff is operating. But I begin to train my thinking in a new way so that I not necessarily don't ever have fear. I have fear. I fear all the time. But I also can stop and say, where's the tiger? So that I can begin to remind myself, oh, that wasn't even me. That was just some old physiology. That was just something going through my nervous system. Where's the tiger? I can align myself. I can stop. I can breathe. I can take the spiritual pause before I punch somebody in the throat.
Oh, yes.
Right. Before I get so out of alignment with who I am that I'm just out there, free form.
Right.
Fear will have us doing all kinds of things. Love aligns us. Now, this ain't sentimentality. It's not, I'm going to be passive love. Love and justice, for example, are the same. Think about that. Love and justice are the same.
Come on, talk
because
about
the one mind understands justice. Justice flows, equality flows from the mind that created everything. And so if we're acting out of alignment with justice and equality, it's not a time to retreat in terms of, oh, there's nothing I can do. It's to align ourselves with something, with justice, with equality. And how do I act from there? How do I move out from equality? How do I align myself with truth that says, oh, there's something to be done here. What is it? Let me align myself now. Align myself. What does that mean? Let me bring my thinking out of the fear place and back to the truth. Let me align my body response. Let me take a breath. Let me step back. Let me remember. Let me remember who I am. I'm not this fearful thing. I'm not the sinful thing. I'm connected to the one mind that extends itself as everything. That means that one mind is infinite intelligence. That same mind is in me. So I have access. But I won't hear it if I'm in fear. I won't know what to do next if I'm in fear.
Absolutely. Whew. We got a whole word. Every time I look up, I'm like, I cannot believe how much the time flies.
I know.
But I want to let people know about CSC because, meaning, every week, because, we're here every week, and it's while I miss everybody in person, I'm glad that we are still able to gather. So tell folks a little bit about, CSC every week.
Well, CSC is now live streaming because of the pandemic. We are only live streaming. Once the restrictions and everything, where it's safe to meet again, we'll come back together. But you can check us out on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, Celebration Spiritual Center. Just search for that. We also have a Facebook page, same name, Celebration Spiritual Center. Check out for that. And hit the notification button and you'll get an instant notification of when we live stream, which is every Sunday, 11 a.m. And you ain't gonna be in there all day.
Facts.
Facts. It don't take all that to remember the truth of who you are.
Facts. We won't be in there all day, but it's always a good word and great music. I'm so glad when y'all started to stream in some of the old videos from from Soul 21. So Soul 21 is the choir at CSC. Amazing, beautiful voices, and
so you'll get music. You'll get a meditation because we practice what we preach, and you'll get a message that is affirmative, loving, reminding. Inspired, uplifting, so that you can take this truth into your day and begin to let go of ideas that we were conditioned to believe about God and ourselves, and remember that we are full of love and not full of sin. That most people walking around thinking, oh, I got to protect myself and I got to prepare myself for the hell that is after, let alone they don't realize that they live in hell now, because their minds are all caught up in an experience that is hellish, and they create hell in their own lives from that perspective. So all of that's important. Absolutely. We align ourselves with the truth, that we are one with God, that God loves us unconditionally, that God is always available, answers are always available, and that we can live from that place of peace and joy and do what is ours to do because we know who we are.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you to pray us out. I feel like that was kind of a prayer.
There won't be any begging prayers at CSC. It's all affirmative
No,
prayer.
and honestly, that's why I wanted you to pray us out, because I feel like, and it is maybe strange to say, but I feel like people need to hear that kind of prayer. You know, often prayer is in a space of begging all the time.
Right. We don't beg and beseech God. We know that we are one with God. We know that God is loving us and that God is loving, that God is kind and God is supporting us. And so we don't beg God, oh, please, God. We just know that God is pleased. Take that in. God is pleased with us. That's a whole different understanding. And it takes a while to kind of get that out of our system, that we don't have to look over our shoulder, that God is pleased with us. Now let us be pleased with ourselves.
Yes. I think that's a good ending right there. I'm so glad you were able to join me this evening, this night, before we go into this inauguration, as we turn the page on the country. And,
let us imagine the world that we want to see.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I
know that, right, this is a trying time. It is. But this age of Aquarius is not just about love and light. It's about a celestial speed up, so to speak. It's about things coming into being, things that would take years and centuries to know. Instantaneously, we know who is operating from love and who's not. We know who are the racists and who are those that are out there wanting to cause harm. We know it instantaneously. But it could cause us to be afraid. Let's not be afraid. Let's realize that right now we're getting all the information we need. And once we start to tap into what is ours to, first of all, be, who are you going to be now that we're creating a new reality, a new country? Because that's what we're doing. All of this stuff coming up is just so we can heal, but it has to be revealed. When those people say, oh, this is not who we are, it is who we are, but it's not who we were created to be. So let's begin to think about the world we want to create. Let's begin to align ourselves with the truth of how we were created. And let's love ourselves and disconnect when we need to. Take the mental break, take the pause, and come back asking love-based questions. What is mine to do? Mother, Father, God, who am I to be right now? When is my time to connect and disconnect? And follow the leanings of your spirit, because it is connected to the spirit.
Amen, Ashe, and so it is. Thank you, PY, for joining us tonight. Again, Celebration Spiritual Center every Sunday, 11 a.m. You can go to the YouTube channel, Facebook, or even go to celebrationsc.org just to find out more information. Join me. I'd love to see y'all in the chat with me.
That's hilarious. I love seeing y'all. I love seeing y'all in the chat. I love seeing y'all in the chat.
And I really love and appreciate you, PY. And we'll have to do this again. I'm really excited about the day when I'll be able to do this. Have this platform and do it in person with people. So
yeah,
that day.
Thank you for being willing to listen to and step out in an inspired way to create this podcast, to focus on the power of the feminine, to talk about the issues of the day from that perspective, and to realize the wisdom that we as women possess. And that wisdom is now showing up in so many places to change the face of the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you soon, sweetie.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye for now.
Thank y'all so much for hanging in for all this time. Thank you again, PY. That's what I've been living for the past few years at Celebration Spiritual Center. And if y'all have been wondering or thinking like, what's going on with Shelley? That's what's going on with Shelley in part, but I'm always a person who is looking to grow and be better. So I'm really thankful and grateful for the community that is Celebration Spiritual Center. And before we go, because as always, I always say I'm over time. But in the past, I have been honoring women who have been killed or irreparably harmed by police or misogyny, homophobia, transphobia. I'm not going to do that tonight. We are on like I said, we're on the cusp of many things. We're on the cusp of Aquarius, but we're also on the cusp of a new administration coming into power. And I just want to say a few things about that. As we look toward Inauguration Day tomorrow. Just really quickly, I think I think myself and a lot of folks have had sort of like mixed feelings about all of this, because we know, that while we are really glad that 45 is out the door, we know that we have to keep hold 46's feet to the fire. Like, we cannot do with 46 what we did with 44, which was, when President Obama came in, everybody just sort of sat back and was like, okay, we're good now, and we know better. We know better. We have to continue to stay in action and in the truth of what we know that this place, this world can be. We're not there yet, but we're on our way. So I think, for me, just personally, it's been a little up and down sometimes. I wish that I could be super excited about Kamala being vice president, because it's historic. And this is not really a thing about her or anything. I think it's more about just knowing that the times that we're in, and I know that the road is going to be, it's going to be long, for her. But I want to say that the things I have seen and what I just have wanted to just make note of as this Black woman is stepping into this office is that I'm seeing stories of, because Kamala's mom is from the Tamil Nadu region in India. So women of that, from that region here and in India have been putting on the ground or drawing on the ground what's called, and I'm sorry for pronouncing this wrong, columns or columns, but I think it's columns. But basically it's a protection. Like, they're out there and they are doing this work, and I just thought, like, wow, that's not something that we have seen, for past presidents of any kind, people just out, people of, of a very particular culture and knowing, setting forth and saying, no, we are putting this shield, this power, this protection over our sister. And I know they're doing it at the White House. I mean, over everybody, but really, if she wasn't there, that wouldn't be happening. So I just wanted to point that out. And also, Kamala she's East Indian and she's West Indian. You know what I'm saying? So, all my Jamaicans out there, all my folks that I know we know what to do. We know what the rituals are, get it in, put that power of protection over our sister. And just realize as we move forward that, like, something that Senator Pat Spearman would say when she was on all the time, or when we would talk in private, talk about the long game. And this is a long game. Like, it's going to take a time. We're in a paradigm shift. We didn't get here overnight. So we're not going to get out of it overnight, but we're going to get out of it. And, but we have to be vigilant and know that we can do this. We have it. We are divine and we can do. So usually I light a candle for my fallen sisters, but tonight I am lighting for Miss Kamala, for Miss Stacy, for Ms. Latasha, for all of the sisters that are, Ayana and AOC and all the sisters, Corey, everybody that is charged to be in our nation's capital to affect change. I am lighting this candle for them tonight. And I'm really thankful and grateful, that they said yes, because it takes courage. We all have our thoughts about all things America, but it takes courage to say, I'm going to change the world. So big love to them. So on that note, I just want to do, my little housekeeping, which is subscribe, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, wherever you're watching. Even if you're watching on Facebook, go over to the YouTube channel and like and subscribe, because it's all about these algorithms. It's all about, a girl needing to or wanting to monetize, you know what I'm saying? So I need a certain amount of subscribers to monetize. So please, go over there, subscribe, tell your friends, share with the network, let people know all of season 1 is up on YouTube. So you can go back, you can check out all the episodes, and we're full steam ahead in season 2. Follow on IG and Twitter at Punanny Politixxx. You see it all there. And also exciting, next week, I'm back with Honey Child. So if you're not sure who Honey Child is, listen, Honey Child, right now, I'm calling her the hardest working woman in show business, because she, through this whole pandemic, has just been doing her thing. Honey Child, she's a guitarist, vocalist, songwriter, activist. My girl's like in 4 bands right now through the pandemic. You know what I'm saying? So it's really amazing. I'm really excited to have Honey Child on next week. If you're not familiar with Honey Child, come on back and get into what she's getting into. And, coming up on this season of Punanny Politixxx, listen, some of my guests coming on the show, Somi's coming on the show. If you're not sure about who Somi is, just Google Somi, Somi, singer, songwriter extraordinaire, Grammy nominated. Adrienne Marie Brown is coming on the show. Toshi Regan's coming on the show. Latasha Brown's coming on the show. Martha Redbone's coming on the show. Rosa Clemente is coming on the show. And that's not even everybody. I'm excited. I'm so excited. I'm excited. So I'm going to go on that note, because I know I have gone on and on, as our girl Ibadu would say. But I'm so happy to be back. Next week, I'll probably have a different background. I keep pointing the wrong side. I have a different background, but check out Simone Lee. Check out her work. She's, like I said, amazing artist, somebody that we should all know, love, and support. So I think that's all. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for tuning in live. Again, spread the word. Let folks know we'll be here every week, into the spring. I think this is going to help me get through the winter, along with all those brothers that I just mentioned earlier. All right, y'all. Have a good night, and I'll see you next week.